Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We are live from Grapevine, Texas. We're out here for a few weeks for Chorus, so this will be fun and interesting. Hopefully, I can get a few more of these videos knocked out. We've got some slow time, so we're going to jump into Genesis 16. It's Hagar and Ishmael. So remember, God's promised Abraham that he's going to have, descendants as many as the stars, and they're in their 80s and 90s, Abram and Sarai at the time, and so they're getting frustrated. So jump into 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." So God's promised them, but they don't see any other way because they're so old. So she can't have kids. They've been trying their whole life, and so impatiently Sarai tells Abram to sleep with her slave, her maid, and she can bear a son that way. So this kind of shows the beginning of Sarai's impatience. But of course Abram agrees, because she's like, "Hey, go sleep with the maid, with a house cleaner." So Abram agrees to what Sarah said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan for 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. So now she's pregnant. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. So first Sarai is saying, "Hey, I want a child. I want a son. We don't have one. Sleep with the maid, with our slave, and we'll get a child out of it." Well, then as soon as she does, Sarai's pissed off at her husband and her slave, because now she's pregnant and carrying, and so she's kind of jealous too. So she says to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." So now she's saying it's Abram's fault. So first she was impatient with God, then it's so she has Abram sleep with her. She gets pregnant. It works, but because she manipulated the situation, she's jealous of Hagar, and she's blaming Abram because it's his fault somehow. And he says, No. Your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think is best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. So now she's mean to her, and Hagar's got to flee. And let's do a little bit more, and then I want to jump into Hagar. It says, "The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, 'Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?' 'I'm running away from my mistress Sarai,' she said. Then the angel of the Lord told her, 'Go back to your mistress and submit to her.' The angel added, 'I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count.' The angel of the Lord also said to her, 'You are now pregnant. You will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all of his brothers.' She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. 'You are the God who sees me,' for she said, 'I have now seen the one who sees me.'" Okay, in capital. So she named God. She was the first one to ever really give God a name, and it's the one who sees me. So I've seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Laharoi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Okay, so that's 16. Before we jump over to 17, let's kind of break it down. 1, oh man, we see Sarai being impatient with God, and then trying to manipulate the situation, and then she blames her husband, and then she's jealous, and so she's kind of got her own battles, struggles, demons she's fighting. Meanwhile, imagine being Hagar. Do you guys ever feel like there's someone out there that you're trying to please? Okay, she's she's whatever she has to do whatever she's asked, because she's the maid, but she's also a slave on this translation. Okay, so she even has to give up her own body. Okay, so she does that for Sarai. Well, then Sarai's mad at her for that. And then she's mean and she's jealous, and everything that Hagar tries to do to please her does not work. And so she finds herself just running away. She can't live in this anymore. So we've all been in that situation. But no matter what, where she ended up, she's in the desert, but she's also at a well, at a spring. So sometimes we only focus on our desert and what we're running from or what our problems are, and we don't focus on the well that God gave us, the opportunity to be replenished, requenched at any time. So there are things that he does along the way for our survival, as long as we trust in the Lord, that he has a plan. So angel of the Lord came, and Hagar's just over it, right? She ran away. She's pregnant. She feels completely betrayed. Can't please anyone. God shows up, and so no matter what we're going through, God's watching us. God's on our side. God sees us. God sees our troubles. He sees our desert. He puts the well out there for us. And God has a plan, and we just have to trust it all the time. Even though we don't see how it works, we've got to trust in that plan. And so for her to say that, God, she saw the one who sees me. God always sees what we're going through. So she called him by the name. We love that. Let's see. So let's see. I have my little notes here. I had to write them with Cora's crayon because the kids took my pen. She gave up her body for the Lord. The Lord gives her name. And then, okay, we'll jump over to 17 in a minute. But before we just kind of end on 16 with Hagar, when people failed Hagar, God provided. And when people cast her aside, God drew her closer. And God saw every corner of her broken heart. And so God sees every corner of our broken hearts and what we're going through, and will always be there. She's thinking she's going to die alone in the desert, pregnant, and never have this baby. And God's saying, no. That baby is going to have more descendants than you can actually count. Okay? So this wasn't the real child that God had promised them, because Sarai didn't have it. Down the road, we'll kind of get into, this branches into Islam, and how Ishmael went that way and Isaac went, father of Moses, or Moses' bloodline. But anyway, let's jump over to 17, the covenant of circumcision. So when Abram was 99 years old, so that makes Ishmael 13, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly increase your numbers. So again, he's promising Abram, I will increase your numbers. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. So now we have Father Abraham. For I have made you the father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. So he's promising Abram that there's going to be a lot of descendants. So far he has a child, a teenage boy, with the maid slave, because his wife was impatient. So this is a big promise from God, and he doesn't get it. And really, he's promising Abram where he's going to have multiple sons, okay, in the future, and they're all going to fight over it, and they are still fighting over it to this day, okay? All of Abraham's descendants. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you, and and you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner. Those who are not your offspring, whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Real quick on the circumcision, God is asking for dedication. You know, nowadays we see like babies be dedicated to the church, to the Lord. This is a physical commitment to the Lord for every male born, okay? So this is the dedication to God. So they're not just kind of unbranded. This is God's brand on you being circumcised. God also said to Abram, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. So now he's promised a son through Sarah, which she was not patient with before. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham fell face down and laughed. He said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? So he's 99, 100, and Sarah's what, 90? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Then God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. So this is the son that's really meant to be the Isaac, the father of the Hebrew people, right? From Abraham. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. So that's the chosen people. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and I will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac. So Ishmael is already the half-son, redheaded stepchild of this process of Abraham's supposed to have all the descendants, okay? So the impatience through Hagar the slave, and now we have Ishmael. My covenant I will establish Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. So he's given him a 1-year promise. When he had finished speaking with Abraham, God went up from him. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in the household or bought with his money, every male in his household, and circumcised them. So he dedicated him as God told him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13. Abraham and his son Ishmael were both circumcised on that very day, and every male in Abraham's household, including those born in his household or bought from a foreigner, was circumcised with them. So Abraham is now dedicating all the men around him to the Lord, circumcising them from the babies to him to servant slaves, even his 13-year-old son. So now he's got kind of a herd here of males that we are dedicating to the Lord. But this is the covenant, this is the promise. And so we kind of also want to think about like what God's promised to us, what we've promised to God, and what it takes to keep that, because God has plans for us. Even though we can't see it, we can't see the forest through the trees sometimes. We feel like we're in the desert, even though our back's against the well. God's always going to pull us through. And so as long as we stay faithful, God will be faithful to us no matter what. But we need to stay faithful to him to help these promises go a lot smoother and less deserts that we have to go through. So we're going to kind of close on that, but I just want everyone to know, if you're going through something like Hagar, where you don't feel loved, like you're outcast, like no matter what you do or try hard to do, it just gets worse and worse, and you can never please your boss, your spouse, whoever it is you're working with, that God sees you. Remember, she was the first person to ever named the Lord, and she said, this is the one who sees me. So God is the one who sees us. He sees our struggles, our strifes, our trials, our sins, our good times, our tears, And so know that no matter what, God will always put that well in the desert for you. He will always have angels beside you, and how much he loves you. So stand strong, go face it through the weekend and the week. Love you guys, and we will see you shortly.